Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, first of all, I want to welcome you to the committee, and I also want to thank you for being willing to serve as the IRS Commissioner. You're under tremendous stress, the stress of the budget, the stress of the taxpayer, being frustrated that we're not be able to respond to them the way they would like with the unanswered phone calls. And you're under the stress of the Congress, who often, this was a very civil hearing, as characteristic of both the chair and the ranking member. But I've watched you just be harassed and berated and belittled, and I'm sorry about that. But I want to thank you for what you do, and I also want to thank the thousands of people who work for the IRS. I'm very proud of the fact that IRS is headquartered in Maryland. And when I move around, this is what they say to me. Barb, help us do our job. Barb, we want to be able to collect the taxes. Barb, we want to answer those phones. What can you do to get us the money? They're telling me to tell the Congress, do our job so that they can get to do their job. And I hear it as I move around, and I'm just impressed by their dedication, because that's what we need to do, collect the taxes that's owed, $385 billion. That's outrageous that that's uncollected, and it's uncollected because some people avoid and some people don't know. And then it's to help the taxpayer. So many with over 150 million returns being filed, 10 million letters, 5 million visits to walk sites, 100 million phone calls to IRS. Wow. And then there's the schemers and the scammers. I want to get to that. So people over a certain age, put me in that category, are now the victims of these targeted scams. I myself was most recently targeted, where I got this phone call saying, you are being sued by IRS. All you need to do is give us your social security number to validate that's who you are. By the way, give us your credit card number and the PIN number, and do you have your bank account number so you can do the electronic transfer? Well, it's not that Barb Mikulski was targeted. It's all the other people over the age of 65 that are being targeted. I say to my colleagues, Senators Collins, who chairs the Committee on Aging, and McCaskill have done a great job identifying the 10 scams against seniors. I am outraged that hardworking people who want to comply are now being terrified. My question to you, Mr. Commissioner, I took action, turned to proper law enforcement, to the Attorney General, the state of Maryland, all of those things. What would you advise the taxpayers that if they get this kind of scheme, scum effort to actually defraud them, what would you recommend? What action would they take? Because while we're working on big budget, we got to remember the little people. So what tips and news could you give today on how to help them?
For the last 2 years since I've been Commissioner, and this began to become a problem, we've tried to warn taxpayers across the country. We put out a list of what we call the dirty dozen at the start of each filing season. The top of that list is phone scams. So what we're trying to do is warn people and to tell them, A, if you're surprised to be hearing from us, you're probably not hearing from us. B, we never threaten you. If somebody threatens you, take the number, let the Federal Trade Commission, law enforcement know, let the Inspector General know. The Inspector General we work with closely has done a wonderful job of tracking and moving forward toward prosecution of people when we can find them, and disrupting those systems. And it's been an important partnership we have with them. But it is a low cost of entry crime. All they need is a set of phone numbers, and they just robo-dial them as much as they can, and they can mask the call so it looks like it's coming from Washington, where the IRS headquarters are. I got one of those. I thought, well, I bet I can talk to somebody at the IRS about this. We tracked it down. It came from Pakistan. And in fact, a number of these calls are obviously generated from abroad. When you arrest someone who's collecting the money, a lot of times they're mules, is known in the trade, and they have no idea who they're
right with. Now, there are people watching this on C-SPAN, and then the use of media, both media as we know it and social media as we're coming to know it. Right. How can we communicate? One, take no action, but if you get this kind of call, who do you turn that into?
Turn that information, you can go to our website, call the Inspector General, call the Federal Trade Commission, call your local law enforcement. Most importantly, the IRS will never have you make a payment to a bank account or a debit card. IRS will have you make a payment to the United States Treasury. If somebody wants money for someplace else, don't send it.
Now, this also goes to the ability to answer your phone. So the phone is often left unanswered because of this. I know that since 2011, you have really had 6 years of consecutive annual budget cuts because of the Congress. How would you characterize the funding request to deal with customer service? Presuming most people want to comply, most people have legitimate questions. Some people are just scared because they get these calls. Some are people that are just starting a business for the first time. Do you feel that the request that you've submitted this year would begin to deal with this? 62% of the calls were unanswered in 2015.
Yes, actually, we already can see the impact of having additional people to help us deal with taxpayers. We've lost over 3,000 call center representatives over the last 5 years. And that's just the question. You don't have people, they're not going to be able to answer the phone. This year, thanks to the funding from the Congress, we've been able to add 1,000 people. Our level of service, we think, is going to go up during the filing season into the mid-60s as opposed to the low 40s. It will still be low for the year because for the first 3 months we didn't have the money. But we do think even with that, the level for the year will be 47 to 50% as opposed to 37. If the president's budget is funded in these categories, in allowing us for both user fees and the regular funding, we think we could get to a level next year for the entire year at 70%. Our goal would be go back to where we were in the mid-2000s, where our level of service was 80% and the waiting time was less than 3 minutes. In other words, everyone ought to be able to call the IRS, get an immediate answer, get someone who is trained to answer their question. We're moving in that direction thanks to the additional funding, but it is a simple equation of if we have additional resources, we'll hire the people who will be able to answer the calls.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.